Okay, and before we get into this video, if you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. And if you want to donate on Patreon, you can, but only if you want to. But anyways, so today we're going to be talking about something else that I found in the Space World demo that's actually very interesting. I've mentioned this before, but we're going to go into more details about it. So you might remember how in Gen 2, like once you get to the Kanto region, you would pass through the Victory, before you get to Kanto, you go to the Indigo Plateau, but before you go to the Indigo Plateau, there's the Victory Road that you pass through. This, however, there's actually two Victory Roads in the 1997 Space World demo, or maybe if you want to call it the Elite Four Labyrinth version of it. So anyways, what happened was in the final version of Gold, Silver, and Crystal Gen 2, or even Heart Gold and Soul Silver's remake, you might remember how you would pass through Victory Road, you'd be at the Elite Four, and that was it. Well, this wasn't always the case, though. Now, keep in mind, the world map for Gen 2 was completely different back in 1997. So what happened was, this is what they did. So when you got to the Victory Road and then the Indigo Plateau, that's actually where the 8th gym was in the Kanto region. But the Kanto map looked a lot different than the world map in the Johto region on this game. So what happened was, you would start out in a town called Silent Hill. Obviously a reference to Silent Hill, of course. But you would also go, but north of it was another city. But you could only access it through a waterfall, and you could only access it through having all 8 badges to continue on. Then after that, this is where you're climbed to Mount Fuji, which is technically the highest elevation point in Japan, I do believe, still resides. And that's where the Elite Four was. But the problem was, though, in order to get to the Elite Four, then you had to pass through the second Victory Road, which was basically like you had to fight your way through like 30-something trainers, literally, that were hired by the league. If you talk to them individually, they talk about how some people got this far, but they don't think they're going to make it. And that was even before they considered challenging the Elite Four themselves. So that'd be interesting to see how far they got. So you get all the way to the Elite Four, and then you fight, the Elite Four, and then there's the champion, But at this time, I do believe it was, it's kind of debatable, like, what ideas they had in mind. Lorelei could have been the first one. Then there was Bruno and a couple other people. But Lance was still the champion, which explains why Lance had, like, level 60s and all that. But it is interesting to think, though, that the Pokemon that you fought before, like, you really get to see how different the game really was. All the layouts were, all the Pokemon were there, all the legendaries were there. There were even different areas in the area. But it just goes to show you just how different the game really was. And so, really, if anything, if I've learned something from this, it's like the good ideas that they do scrap, they just hold on to them. But it's like, I'm surprised they didn't keep those in at the same time, I guess they really kind of figured, the old Victory Road was technically in the same place it should have been, because that's where the Indigo Plateau was in the Kanto region, for playing by Gen 1. And there was even trainers in the first Victory Road that you would pass through, which is actually pretty cool, too. So, it's interesting to think about. How much different it would have been. Obviously, you go to Victory Road and Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and there's no trainers there but your rival at the end. So that's kind of interesting, actually. But I always did wonder why the Elite, Victory Road was empty, per se, but it was there nonetheless, just waiting to be conquered by somebody who could get to the end, and then all the way to the Elite Four at the end, too. So, something to think about. But at the same time, nonetheless, it does have its points here and point there. So anyways, if anything, we've learned there's just a lot of differences they had between the games, and if I come across anything else, I'll let you know. But really, I think what this showed was that they had a lot of ideas before they actually got done programming the game that they wanted to. Before the game's actually finalized the way they wanted to. So really, if anything, worse comes to worse, I would actually say that Pokemon really was a lot more different than what we could imagine it to be. And with that being said, I think, even if they were to leak like Gen 3 prototypes and Gen 4, I'm sure we'd find a whole bunch of stuff that was probably not even close to the end games and that. So that's actually pretty interesting to think, like how many concepts were programmed and then they never made it into the final version for whatever reason. But up until Gen 1 and 2, it was usually because of prototype data that was cut because of cartridge limitations. I'd like to see what Gen 3 had to offer if the cartridge limitations weren't the problem, or how much more of a storage capacity, and then the animations they could upgrade, how much that would have been. So who knows.